The smell of fresh flowers hit me before anything else. White roses, my mother's favorite, arranged in 3 tall vases along the reception table. I remember thinking they looked expensive. I remember thinking my sister probably hadn't paid for a single one. I was 31 years old, standing in the lobby of the Hargrove Event Center in Raleigh, North Carolina, wearing a navy blue dress I'd bought 2 weeks earlier specifically for this occasion. My sister Bethany's promotion party. Regional Director of Operations at 43. The whole family had driven in. Cousins from Charlotte, aunts from Virginia, my Uncle Roy, who hadn't left his house in 2 years because of his hip. Everyone was there for her. I had driven 4 hours from Baltimore, where I was finishing my second year as an RN at Johns Hopkins. I had requested the weekend off 3 weeks in advance. I had even bought her a card and written something genuine inside it. Something about being proud of her, which wasn't entirely true but felt like the right thing to say. I was trying. That was the thing nobody talks about. I was always the one trying. My name is Savannah, not the city. My mother just liked the sound of it. I'm the younger one by 12 years, which means I spent most of my childhood watching Bethany get the good version of our parents, the version that had money, the version that had patience. By the time I came around, my dad was working double shifts and my mother was stretched thin, and Bethany had already been crowned the responsible one, the smart one, the one who was going places. I was just the afterthought with the pretty name. I want to be fair here. There were good years. There were Christmases that felt real, vacations where we actually laughed. But by the time I was a teenager, Bethany was already married and living 40 minutes away, and every family dinner became a performance where I watched her receive praise the way some people receive oxygen, automatically, without question, without any awareness that someone else in the room might be suffocating. I graduated nursing school with distinction. My mother called me and said, "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Now Bethany just got a new promotion at her company, did I tell you?" She had told me 3 times. So I am telling you all of this so you understand what kind of evening it was going to be before anything even happened. I walked into that event center already carrying 12 years of being the lesser version of someone I didn't even particularly like anymore. And I smiled, and I hugged my mother, and I said hello to people I barely recognized. And then I found Bethany. She was standing near the bar with a group of her work colleagues, and she looked good, I'll give her that. Red dress, hair done, heels that probably cost more than my car payment. She turned when she saw me, and her smile was the particular kind she reserved for when an audience was watching. "Savannah," she said, opening her arms. I hugged her. She smelled like perfume and white wine. "You made it," she said, like I'd traveled across an ocean instead of 4 hours down I-95. "Of course I made it," I said. Her colleague, a man named Derek with a pocket square, leaned in and said, "Is this the little sister?" "The very one," Bethany said, and something in her tone did what it always did. Filed me down to a size that fit inside her story better. The night moved the way those nights do. I circulated. I ate things off of small plates. I made conversation with my Aunt Phyllis about her garden renovation and my cousin Drew about his new truck. My mother sat at a table near the front and held court, and every 20 minutes or so someone would come up and congratulate Bethany in front of her, and my mother would smile like she was the one being congratulated. Around 9 o'clock, my mother called me over. I went. She was sitting with Bethany and 2 women I didn't know, and she patted the chair beside her, and I sat down. And then Bethany started talking. Something about property. Something about the duplex my mother owned on Fieldcrest Avenue, a rental property she'd held for 20 years. "Mom's thinking of finally selling," Bethany said. I looked at my mother. "Really?" My mother shrugged in that way she had, like decisions were things that happened to her rather than things she made. "It's getting to be a lot. The upkeep. She's thinking of putting the money in a trust," Bethany said, "for the grandchildren." There was a pause, and I noticed it, but I couldn't quite name what I was noticing yet. The way Bethany was watching me. The way my mother wasn't quite meeting my eyes. "That sounds like a good idea," I said, and Bethany smiled and changed the subject. I should have asked more questions right then. I know that now. But I was tired and I was in a room full of people and I didn't want to be the one who made it complicated. That was always my problem. I didn't want to be the one who made it complicated. An hour later, I was in the hallway near the coat check, texting my friend Kelsey back in Baltimore about whether she'd covered my Sunday shift, when Bethany appeared. No colleagues this time, no audience. Just the two of us, and the sound of the event still going on through the closed double doors. "Can we talk?" she said. "Sure," I said. "I need you to sign something." I looked up from my phone. "What?" "For the property. Mom wants to restructure how it's held, and since we're both listed, technically you need to sign off on the new arrangement." I frowned. "What new arrangement?" "It's just paperwork, Savannah." "Bethany, what paperwork?" She exhaled, like I was being difficult. Like I was the one who had opened with, "I need you to sign something in a hallway at a party." The trust structure, Mom's estate attorney, set it up. It moves the property into a trust controlled by me, so Mom doesn't have to manage it anymore. You'd still be in the will, obviously. I stared at her. I'd still be in the will. "It's not a big deal. You're asking me to sign away my ownership stake in a property that's worth." I stopped. I actually didn't know what it was worth. I'd never asked because I never thought I'd need to. "How much is that property worth, Bethany?" She looked away. "The market's been up." "How much?" "Somewhere around 400,000. I went very still. This is the part where I should tell you that I'm not a dramatic person. I don't yell. I don't throw things. I've worked 3 years in an emergency department, and I've learned that the most dangerous moment is not when someone is screaming. It's when the room gets quiet and everyone stops moving. That's how I felt in that hallway. "You want me to sign over my share of a $400,000 property," I said, very slowly, "at your promotion party. In a hallway, tonight. Mom needs this handled." "Then Mom can call me on Monday." Bethany's face changed. It did the thing it used to do when we were teenagers, and I said something she couldn't immediately control. Her jaw set. Her eyes got flat. "You always do this," she said. "Do what? Make everything about yourself. This is Mom's asset. Mom's decision. You don't even live here. You don't help with anything, you've never helped with anything, and now suddenly you want to have opinions about what Mom does with her own property." I noticed, somewhere in the back of my mind, that she hadn't answered my question. "I never said I wouldn't sign anything," I said. "I said I wasn't going to sign something tonight, in a hallway, without reading it first. I have the documents in my car." "Bethany, it would take 10 minutes. "Bethany, no. What happened next is something I have replayed every single day for the past 7 months. She reached out and shoved me, not a punch, not a slap. A two-handed shove, right to the sternum, the kind that snaps your head back and sends you sideways into the wall. My shoulder hit the corner of the coat check counter and I felt it. Sharp, immediate, and my phone clattered to the floor. I don't know how long I stood there. The doors to the main room were still closed. Someone on the other side was giving a toast. I could hear laughter and the clink of glasses and a room full of people who had no idea what was happening, 8 feet away from them. Bethany smoothed her dress. "Think about what Mom needs for once," she said, and walked back inside. I picked up my phone. The screen was cracked. I stood in that hallway for probably 3 minutes doing nothing but breathing and staring at the floor. Then I went to the bathroom and I sat on the edge of the sink and I looked at my shoulder in the mirror, already bruising at the edge, a dark bloom under the skin, and I took a photograph of it. That part mattered. I didn't know how much yet, but I took the photograph. I went back to the party. I stayed another 45 minutes because I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't want to cause a scene, and I was in shock in the quiet way that doesn't look like shock from the outside. My mother asked me if I was okay, and I said I was tired. Bethany stood across the room and talked to Derek with the pocket square and didn't look at me once. I drove to my hotel. I sat in the parking lot for a long time. Then I called Kelsey. She answered on the second ring and I told her the whole thing, start to finish. And when I was done, there was a silence on the other end and she said, "Savannah, do you still have that photo?" I did. "Okay," she said. Don't sign anything. Don't delete anything. And tomorrow morning I need you to call your mother's county clerk's office. Why? Because if she's asking you to sign something tonight, at a party, with documents already in her car, she's done something already. I want you to check whether anything's been filed on that property in the last 60 days. Kelsey is a paralegal. I don't say that to make this story neater than it is. I say it because that single phone call changed everything. I didn't sleep. I lay in that hotel bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about the way my mother hadn't met my eyes at the table. The way Bethany had said, "You'd still be in the will," obviously, the word obviously, sitting there like a stone in still water. The next morning, I called the Wake County Register of Deeds. It took about 8 minutes. The woman on the line was helpful and patient, and I gave her the property address on Fieldcrest Avenue, and she read back to me what had been recorded 43 days earlier, a deed of trust, in Bethany's name alone. I sat down on the edge of the hotel bed. My name had been on that property for 11 years, since my mother had added me to the deed when I turned 20, something she told me she was doing for both of us, so the girls would always have something. I had never been asked. I had never been notified, and 43 days ago, somehow a deed had been recorded with a signature, my signature, transferring my interest in the property entirely to my sister. I had not signed anything. I had been in Baltimore 43 days ago. I had worked a 12-hour shift. I had gone home and made pasta and watched television. I had not signed a single piece of paper related to my mother's property or anyone else's. Someone had signed for me. I took a photograph of my phone screen showing the recorded document details. Then I went to the lobby and drank 2 cups of bad coffee and called a notary fraud hotline I found through a Google search. They referred me to a real estate attorney. The attorney's office didn't open until Monday, but they had an emergency consultation line, and I left a message, and 30 minutes later, a woman named Jennifer called me back. I told her everything. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Do not go back to that property. Do not confront your sister directly, and do not, under any circumstances, sign anything." "Someone already signed for me?" I said. Another pause. "Then we have a problem," she said, "and by we, I mean your sister." I drove home to Baltimore that afternoon. I called my mother from the road once, and she answered cheerfully and said she'd been so happy to see me last night. I said I was happy too. I did not tell her what I had found. I did not tell her what I knew. I did not tell her that I had already been on the phone with a real estate attorney, or that by Monday morning, Jennifer would be submitting a fraud complaint with the North Carolina Secretary of State and a report to the Wake County Sheriff's Office. I just said I'd call her soon. The next 3 weeks were the quietest I've ever been in my life. I went to work, I came home, I talked to Jennifer 3 times a week and she walked me through everything, what had been filed, what it meant, what the next steps were. The deed had been executed with a forged notarization. Someone had signed my name and a notary had either been deceived or had participated. Both of those things are crimes in North Carolina. Multiple crimes. Bethany called me 11 days after the party. She left a voicemail that started with, "Hey, I know things got a little tense the other night," and I didn't listen to the rest of it. I forwarded it to Jennifer. My mother called 3 days after that. She was more direct. She said Bethany had told her I was making trouble and that she hoped I wasn't going to do anything that would embarrass the family. I asked her if she knew her signature was also on the original deed. She said yes. I asked her if she had known Bethany was restructuring the property. She was quiet for a moment. "It was just supposed to make things simpler," she said. "Mum," I said, "someone forged my signature on a legal document." She didn't say anything. "That's not making things simpler," I said. "That's a crime." She asked me not to call the police. I had already called the police. What happened after that moved faster than I expected, which Jennifer had warned me about. Once a fraud complaint is filed with a notarized forgery involved, the system has procedures, and those procedures have momentum. The investigation took 6 weeks. There were interviews, there were document comparisons, there was a handwriting analyst. The notary, it turned out, was a woman Bethany had used before for business documents, a notary who had, on at least this occasion, notarized a signature without witnessing the signing in person. That is illegal. Both the notary and my sister were charged. Bethany was charged with deed fraud and identity fraud. In North Carolina, deed fraud can carry felony-level consequences. Her employer, the company whose promotion party I had attended wearing a navy blue dress and carrying a card with something genuine written inside, was notified as part of the background process. The regional director of operations position requires a background check for bonding and insurance purposes. She lost the job. The property was returned to its original deed status, my name restored. My mother retained her share. There was no trust. There was no restructuring. There was a court date, and before that court date, Bethany accepted a plea agreement that included restitution, probation, and a felony record that will follow her for the rest of her life. I did not go to the courthouse. I was at work. I was in an emergency department in Baltimore doing what I do, which is take care of people who are hurt. And I found out from Jennifer in a text message at 2:47 in the afternoon that the plea had been accepted. I went to the supply closet and I stood there for about 3 minutes. I am not going to tell you I felt good. That is not the right word. I felt something that was too tired to be relief and too real to be satisfaction. I felt like a person who had been holding their breath for 7 months and had finally, quietly, exhaled. My mother called me that evening. She was crying. She told me she was sorry. She said she hadn't known it had gone that far, that she hadn't known Bethany would actually forge anything. She'd thought it was just paperwork that would get sorted out. She'd thought, I let her talk. And then I said something that surprised me because I hadn't planned it. Mom, I said, I know you love her more. I've known that my whole life, and I'm not angry about it anymore. But you need to understand that loving someone more doesn't mean you get to let them take from me. Those are two different things. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, I know, and I believe she meant it. I don't know what my relationship with my sister looks like from here. Probably not much. The plea agreement has a no-contact clause as a condition of probation, which takes the decision out of my hands for a while, and I'm honestly fine with that. I'm not ready to forgive her. I don't know if I ever will be. There's something about having someone look you in the eyes at a party, at a celebration in your honor, and still try to steal from you, still be willing to forge your name on a legal document, still reach out and put their hands on you in a hallway that doesn't leave easily. But I want to tell you the part that I think about most. It was the photograph, not of the shoulder. That mattered too, eventually, when we were documenting the intimidation, but the photograph I think about is the one I took in the hotel lobby, the screen grab of the property records I found the morning after the party. That one image, taken in under 10 seconds on a cracked phone screen, is what started everything. Because Jennifer told me early on that fraud cases like this often fall apart when there's a delay in documentation, when the injured party waits, when they give the other side time to adjust the story, when they second-guess themselves into silence. I did not second-guess myself into silence. I have spent my whole life being quiet in rooms where I should have spoken, being the one who didn't make it complicated, being filed down to a size that fit inside someone else's story. And I want you to know that I am 31 years old and I am done with that. Not because anything stopped hurting, not because my family is fine now, but because I finally understood something that took me too long to learn. The truth doesn't protect itself. You have to protect it. And I did. I've thought a lot about what actually made this whole thing possible, not the fraud. I mean, what made it possible for Bethany to believe she could do it. And the answer I keep coming back to is that she'd watched me be quiet for 31 years. She'd watched me sit at tables and not ask questions. She'd watched me drive 4 hours to celebrate her and leave before anything got complicated. She had data on me, a lifetime of it, and her bet. The bet she made when she put those documents in her car and drove to that event center was that I would keep being the person I had always been. That's the part that stays with me. She didn't forge my signature because she was reckless. She did it because she calculated that I wouldn't look, and I almost didn't. There's something people don't tell you about being the one who keeps the peace in a family. It doesn't actually keep the peace. It just transfers the cost. Every time I swallowed something unfair, every time I let a comment slide, every time I drove home and said nothing and told myself it wasn't worth the fight, I was paying for something. I just wasn't paying attention to what I was buying. Turns out I was buying the conditions that made what Bethany did feel reasonable to her. I was making her brave. I don't say that to blame myself. What she did was wrong. Full stop. But I think about the version of me that stayed quiet in that hallway, that signed whatever she put in front of me, that went back to Baltimore and felt vaguely uneasy for a few weeks and then let it go. That version of me existed. She was the default. And the only thing that separated me from her was one moment where something in me decided that being reasonable had a limit. The consequences Bethany is living now, the felony record, the job she lost, the legal process that ground forward without anyone being able to stop it, those didn't come from malice on my part. I didn't set out to ruin her. I set out to protect something that was mine. The consequences came from her own choices, stacked up over years, finally meeting a version of me that was paying attention. That's how it works. Not in some cosmic, destined way, just in the plain, practical sense that actions accumulate. What you do quietly, in private, eventually runs into what's real. Bethany thought she was being strategic. She was actually just building a structure that couldn't hold its own weight. Kelsey told me once, after everything was settled, that the bravest thing I did wasn't filing the complaint. It was taking that screenshot in the hotel lobby the next morning, when part of me still wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. That's the moment. That small, unglamorous 8-second decision. That's where the whole thing turned. I think about that a lot when I feel like something is too small to matter. Documentation, a timestamp, a photograph of a bruise, a phone call made before you fully decided what you're going to do. These things feel insignificant in the moment and they become the entire story later. I am still a nurse. I still go to work and take care of people who are hurt. I am still my mother's daughter, and that relationship is complicated and ongoing and probably always will be. But I am not the person who stands in a hallway and absorbs a shove and goes back to the party and says nothing. I found out, at 31, that I was never actually required to be that person. I had just never tested the edges of it before. The truth doesn't protect itself. I said that at the end, and I meant it. But I want to add something now. On the other side of all of it, neither do you.